Alright everyone, it's time for the Occult video 144. Everyone does magic constantly, at least within the original sort of definition of magic, that which is unexplained. If we're talking about the occult in the more philosophical Western sense, we're talking about things that aren't explained or fully controlled within the realm of more secular understanding, modern science, and so forth. If that's the case, the way in which humans interact with each other is far, far more complicated than simply, oh, we tell people things. It transfers information verbally or through writing or some other medium. Imagery, sound, both spoken and in other forms, music, certainly the sonic occult side of it, has a much greater responsibility for human awareness than I think people are typically aware of. And the fact is, most people, they constantly influence their own view of reality and that of others without even consciously controlling the fact that they're doing so. This is the standard protocol of psyops within propaganda. The idea is that human understanding, human awareness, the reality that a person perceives is largely malleable, at least within all realms of human understanding. We can make more objective comments within the more physical realms of science, at least within the totally subjective system of laws that we assume will always exist in a static form. For instance, we can say chromosomes determine your gender, gravity operates, something like that, germs cause disease. Those are more objective comments. But that's not what most human awareness pertains to. Most human awareness pertains solely to the subjective. We talk about religion. We talk about politics, what will or will not work within a human framework. It's not so much that we're talking about, for instance, the more objective side, for example, would be if I take this hammer and this nail and this piece of wood. I put the nail on and I start hammering it. It goes into the piece of wood. It just works. It's simple engineering or whatever you'd term it. Simple physics. But the subjective side, which is more often spoken of, would be, well, what form should that nail take to be maximum efficiency or to be more physically attractive or something? What kind of wood should be using for this specific project? It's totally subjective which one you're choosing. What form should the hammer take? Are we using a sledgehammer, just a regular nail hammer? Are we using a rubber mallet, something like that? Those are all subjective arguments that are made, and there are far more subjective arguments because each individual objective system spawns multiple subjective opinions about it, and all of those are human. Then you have human opinions spawning additional human opinions. You would think of when people are remarking upon the more intangible assets of human wisdom. When they're talking about human systems entirely, they're forming an opinion around a system that exists to denote opinions regarding the physical world. Sometimes you have 3 or 4 different layers of opinion. And until you can see past that, you don't see reality for what it really is. You see nothing more than a theater show. That's what 99.9% of the world population sees on a regular basis. Indeed, strange as though it may sound, the primitive people of uncontacted tribes have a better view of reality than anybody, for the most part, in Western civilization. They simply act. They simply witness. Some of these groups don't even really have the linguistic capability to impart opinion, so much as simply to denote something more solid and subjective. They speak about subjective topics, subjective remarks upon the physical world. But that's what they ultimately just remark upon. They're saying, well, the red tree, vicious lion, something dangerous animal, poisonous mushroom, something like that. It's much more simplistic. It's much more concrete. Their view of reality is closer to objective, actually. The ultimate goal of enlightenment within the framework of human understanding, and if you can understand this, then you can affect others' minds far more easily, is to take the understanding of the capability to make subjective comments on things, to formulate opinions, and try to render them in others' minds as though they were objective. That's what the goal of much propaganda would be. Oh, well, here's this other group of people. We're going to try to get our own population, for the purposes of waging a war, we're going to try to dehumanize this other population in the minds of our people so that support for intervention goes up. So we're going to render caricatures of them as though they were subhuman. And then at the same time, afterwards, we'll exonerate ourselves by saying, yeah, that wasn't really bad propaganda. After all, they were evil because X, Y, and Z. Again, subjective opinion based on subjective human framework. It could be you could envision a culture that wages war gleefully and thinks that dying in battle is some great thing. And not only is there nothing wrong with it, it's actually the highest aspiration of anyone who lives there. And you'd have a totally different view of morality. It's entirely subjective. And humans, because they get so much cognitive dissonance because they're challenged on this from time to time, they develop religion, like organized religion in the more modern sense, to try to give themselves an objective reason to believe in their own opinions, or in the opinions of others more often. When a person has been affected by a mainstream religion, or a political viewpoint, or a social viewpoint, they've been given their opinion. That subjectivity that they themselves will vigorously defend comes from somebody else, sometimes far removed in time and space from them. A Christian, a religious Christian, believes in dogma compiled for centuries by people they never met, by people who spoke different language, totally different cultures and time periods. That's ultimately how they understand the world. A Muslim, they'd be the same thing. Somebody's an Islamist, they may not even speak Arabic. They may have nothing to do with the Middle East, and yet they believe the words of someone who lived 1,500 years ago. Someone who's a Judaist, pagans, honestly, anything like that. When we understand the world through books, which is perhaps better than watching TV or something like that, but when we understand that, a lot of those people are dead too. They're dead opinions as well. And this is all magic. This realm of human understanding that most people don't themselves understand. They understand the world around them, but the way they understand it is a total mystery to them. They can't even quantify it. They don't understand how language works. They certainly don't understand how music and art forms affect them on a regular basis. When they're watching the most innocuous Hollywood film, what's the musical score supposed to do? It's supposed to evoke emotion. That emotion rolls right over into their human understanding. And that's magic. It's not fully quantified. It's not understood at all by the average person. Even those with some understanding of it don't fully understand it. Even those that have thought about these things on the deepest possible level can't possibly make the claim to understand everything about it. Only the general principle, even those of us who practice the occult constantly, can only make general remarks about its form. And it's ever-changing too. Human understanding and awareness changes constantly. And as soon as something is labeled, it gives you the idea to make that label malleable. You would think of concepts like bigotry, or sexism, or any other term that's used to denote something within the realm of human behavior especially. It's fully malleable. The way in which a person understands the world depends upon the way in which that language is posed to them, within context, usually with a bias of some sort attached. Now, it could be benevolent. It could be, well, we want people to be nice, get along. Or it could be malevolent. Oh, we want to control people. We want to extract tribute from them in some way. That's all magic. How you understand the world you see around you is basically an illusion. It may not even be fully real. There's a fairly decent reason to believe that it's some sort of weird matrix-like projection of sorts that simply has some standard programming rules applied to it so that people aren't just flying around randomly and the universe doesn't collapse in on itself, so that it can stay stable in some way or something like that. Could be totally subjective. Everything we've ever thought about or seen or witnessed could be not even real. We could be strapped into an AI machine. Nobody would even know. It could be that solipsism in its absolute form is real. Maybe you're the only person that truly exists. Maybe I'm just a generation of your mind. Maybe you're just a generation of my mind. That goes into the realm of some of the fringe weirdness, but if we're going to talk about human understanding, all these things can be imagined by humans. You look at the sci-fi realm. Some of the weird shit that's been described throughout time by the greater minds of science fiction or fantasy have eventually become more or less real. The idea of deriving energy from the sun for some purpose or from, some other source. The idea of splitting the atom to make a weapon, something like that, originally is just a theoretical school, largely based, again, on what at the time was taken as fiction. Oh, it can't happen. It's you can't reduce the atom further, something like that. The idea of spaceflight, the idea of landing on the moon, orbiting the Earth, pre-Sputnik or something like that. were things that were flying, with terrestrial sort of flying machines, like a plane or a blimp or something, was in the realm of science fiction. You don't even have gas balloons till the 1700s, I believe, like the 1750s, if I remember correctly. You don't even have planes in even remotely a modern form until the interwar period. Before that, you have these various prototypes, some of which work better than others. And then before that, you don't even have really human flight on any real level other than, again, go up in a balloon that you can barely even direct, build a blimp or something like that. And this is the reality that we comprehend. And much of what we consider to be impossible is actually possible. We've artificially limited ourselves based on the systems that we already recognize and comprehend. And those people that drive the future, that create the next reality, are people who think outside the box. It's not coming from people who, stay in convention and they believe in the conventional wisdom of human morality, the conventional wisdom of what is or is not physically possible in some engineering manner within the laws of physics or something. It's driven by those who essentially ignore those rules, realize at some degree, whether dimly or more absolutely, that all of that reality they've been taught is bullshit, essentially. It's literally, it's bullshit. It's like, fuck. And then they apply that, and then they think beyond the box. Most people can't really do that. It's sad. Part of it's the educational system, honestly. We teach people to remember things as though they were objective facts for the purposes of finding employment. That's what the Western education system has devolved into. And then the third world education system is here. I'll show you how to do something physically and you just mimic me. It's the same basic concept. It's just ours. We call it developed. We call it advanced. We make decent accountants, but we don't make good inventors anymore because of our educational system. Should go back to the style of ancient Athens or something like that. Just tell people to ask questions and think real hard, and hope that they arrive at various answers. They can debate them, they can test them out, will drive human progress a lot faster. Progress, so-called, in the technological sense anyway. So yeah, you do magic. You do it all the time. Nobody can fully quantify exactly how you're affecting the world, or even how that basic process does affect the world. You look at chaos theory. A single word that you utter may change the course of human history. One sniper in the First World War was a little more accurate. Hitler never rose to power. Stalin's mother had a miscarriage, something like that. It could cause major effects down the road. And the more your scope reaches others, the more people are interacting with you in some way. Again, the internet, it's a lot easier than in the past where you had to be in physical proximity or, get on TV or something. That affects the world in a much wider manner. We've created a more chaotic world by giving people social media. When people have a platform to put their opinions out there, however unfounded, they may be very smart or they may be very dumb. They may be very well-spoken, they may be rather poorly spoken in some cases. It might be high-quality material, and it may be, really, really primitive in nature. It looks like it was made in the late 90s or something. When we give people those platforms and people are interacting with that, we drive the world faster into helter-skelter, which is chaos. That's the best term that you can use for it. It's like a helter-skelter ride, yeah. We keep spiraling around and things get weirder and weirder. I mean, look at the world around you. Doesn't it seem just slightly more weird than it did like 10, 20 years ago? I think it does. And I don't think that that's just a remark that people who are aging are making. I think that most people, no matter what their age is, like, what the fuck is happening here? Seems like reality's getting a little bit on the unhinged side. Rather chaotic. That's about all. Peace out.